Sorry about the little layoff there, everybody. It was not on purpose. Extremely busy couple of weekend days, but then the affliction. I was afflicted. I was affected. I'm always affected, but brutal stomach bug sweeping through the Vespers household took me. I didn't sleep. Oh, it was bad. It was not a good one. But silver lining of all of this is my voice is pretty well rested right now. Haven't podcasted in a few days. Really didn't talk to anyone for like 30 hours. Mostly texted if I needed things. So I got the pipes are ready to go, but would have liked to get this show going a little bit sooner, like yesterday or the day before. Welcome to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, everybody. I'm Dan Vespers. We are profiling players 81 through 90 today on the show. We have two more of these. This one and the next one, we're going to get through the top 100, and then we're going to start breaking them out into chunks. The 81 through 90 range today starts with John Collins, then Devin Vassell, Andrew Wiggins, Anthony Simons, Malik Monk. That's 81 to 85. 86 through 90, Norman Powell, now a member of the Miami Heat. Freddie VanVleet after Powell on the Heat. We're doing Dr. Seuss. Kel'el Ware at 88, Isaiah Hartenstein at 89, and then Mark Williams is number 90. Let's just dive right on into John Collins as I try to get this thing to share properly. Why is this not working? This is extremely annoying. And there we go. John Collins. We got it. We got it, everybody. Yay. Sound effect. We got it. Subscribe. By the way, please hit that subscribe button and please hit that like button. Let's power boost every part of Old Man Squad, and I need your guys' help on that. Collins, of course, a member now of the Los Angeles Clippers, acquired from the Jazz during the offseason as Utah completes finally the full scale of their teardown after half-tanking measures. It was the most annoying thing ever. Now they are in full tank mode, so they've got nothing but young guys out there. And the Clippers, who are embroiled in a scandal this morning, surrounding Kawhi Leonard possibly getting paid under the table. Honestly, okay, I have thoughts on this Kawhi Leonard thing. I don't think I fully understand it, but I'll save those for a little later in the show. You guys want to know what my thoughts are on John Collins at 81. My thoughts are, I like him at 81. I don't think that he's going to have quite the role that he had in Utah when he was healthy last year, which catapulted him inside the top 50 at 19 points, 8 rebounds, a steal, a block, 1.5 threes, 53-85 splits. He's kind of like, honestly, he's a little bit like a Tobias Harris build where he's pretty good at a lot of stuff, not overwhelmingly great at any one thing. Of course, if you take usage away, that's bad across the board because he's already a low turnover guy, so it doesn't really change things all that much. He was a little higher last year, but that wasn't ever going to stick, really. But the fact that he's good at both percentages means that you remove usage, you remove all the things. The upshot here is that the 2.6 turnovers last year were probably kind of an inflated number, so his 9-cat rank likely would have been even better had that number been given time to kind of settle to probably something more like 1.9. And that would have put him as like an early fourth, late third kind of dude. So peel off a little usage from that. He's still going to get to do a decent amount, but it's not going to be anywhere close to this because the Clippers also brought in Bradley Beal. Ivica Zubac is taking care of the middle. Like, I think John Collins plays his 30 minutes. He's very much the starting power forward for this Clippers team, but 13 to 14 shots is probably a relatively high number for him to try to aspire to. When you think about the fact that you've got Kawhi, who's probably going to be taking 17, 18 shots a game, James Harden, who's going to be lower than that, but he's going to be high on the assist totem pole. Norman Powell took 16 shots a game last year, but a lot of that came with Kawhi out, and Bradley Beal slots into a lot of that as well. So you're looking at John Collins probably more in the, I would think, 11 range, and that pushes him down to that top 75 kind of realm, which is fine, but obviously not quite as good as last year. So I'm good with John Collins around 81. I think this is a good spot for him. I think it's a fair spot for him. He's going to try to play the year in its entirety because he's been sort of artificially shut down this past year and semi-artificially shut down the year before that. He wasn't particularly healthy during his time in Atlanta, but it wasn't god-awfully bad most of the time there. So I would say a game plan for something like 70 to 72 games out of Collins. Hope for more, pray for more. Don't be surprised if it's a little bit less, and something in that 75 range. So this is a pretty fair spot for John Collins. Devin Vassell is number 82 on the Yahoo board, and I actually think that this is a relatively fair spot for him as well. If we're talking just about, like, did they get picks right or wrong, I think this is pretty right. Vassell was number 81 last year on 44-79 splits, field and free throw line. I think you could see improvements on one or possibly both of those. He was around his career mark in field goal percent. The number of three-pointers he was attempting sort of per shot was a little bit higher. So that drove the field goal percent down just a little bit. But, like, you could see it at 45 instead of 44. You could see the free throw, you could get up to 81 instead of 79. These are not things that you are going to bank on, but they're certainly possibilities. The problem, of course, is that the Spurs just keep adding things around Devin. So if you're drafting him at 82, you're probably hoping he redoes what he did this past season. And I can't promise it. So, yes, relatively fair spot with a tiny bit of room for improvement if his percentages go up, but also room for a drop-off if you think that a healthy De'Aaron Fox takes more or Steph Castle takes more. They brought in a prized rookie. Like, there are a lot of ways that Vassell could end up doing less, and the Spurs still have just a litany of not that amazing backup wings that can also push in there and take some of the Vassell job. So he's not my favorite at 82. I don't think it's a bad pick here. I just don't think that there's room for the upside that we were probably hunting for when he was going in a similar range last year. Spurs, by the way, have a season win total over at FanDuel Sports of 43.5. Most people are coming in on the under, and I'm a little bit surprised by that, if only because, the Spurs were a very popular over team last year, and I said, nah, take it easy there, guys. Like, we're not all the way at rebuild is done yet. San Antonio got to 34 wins last season. So, FanDuel's got them. That's a big jump. A proud partner of us here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball and the Believe Network. 10 more wins is a big, big jump, but they are a lot better. With De'Aaron Fox healthy and an offseason under their belt and all these pieces, and, of course, Wemby, another year better. Like, this is a Spurs season that I think could go relatively well. So I think we're looking at a Spurs team that's probably going to take that next step. I don't know how much they're going to get out of Harper. To me, that's not really the thing that's going to do it. I think it's going to be the Wemby, De'Aaron Fox pair. And the Spurs had so many tight losses last year that it feels like this now is an opportunity for them to kind of get over the hump a little bit. They had a better expected number of wins than the Phoenix Suns last year, and they lost to them by a couple of wins. Like, if they start to prevail in even like 3 or 4 more of the close games, that gets them to 40. So then it's really the improvement you're talking about is more like, can we get 4 more wins as opposed to 10? Anyway, I still think this is a fine spot for Devin Vassell, even if I'm not all that excited about it. I think you can do better. Andrew Wiggins is the next one on the board. He's number 83 on the Yahoo pre-rank list. And, I've gone back and forth on this one a little bit. A lot of what Wiggins will do this coming season, and remember now he's in Miami, so his job is bigger. He was taking 15 shots a game with the Heat, which is more like early Wiggins Warriors numbers. He was at 14.9 his first season in Golden State. He was at 14.8 in Miami last year. He's added the three-pointer basically since his last year in Minnesota. He kind of started to add the three ball a little bit. So his time in Miami, 19 points, 4 boards, 3 and change assists, 1.2 steals, a block, 46% from the field, 73% at the free throw line, 2 3-pointers a game. That was pretty freaking good. Now, he didn't play down the stretch entirely. There was about a 2.5 week period where he was out. But just like the stats with Miami were bona fide solid. Like 46% from the field. I think you'd like that to be better. 73% at the free throw line is what you get out of Wiggins. He's not going to be a good foul shooter. And so that's always going to drag him down a little bit. But the counting stats were excellent. And if there's any prayer of him maybe seeing a slight uptick in field goal percent, I don't know that we can bank on it, but like he's had seasons where he's been at 47 or 48. Not many, a few, and not as many lately. There's a little bit of room there. The problem, of course, with a guy like Wiggins is that because he's a percentages drag, both of them typically, it's extremely hard for him to get higher than about this range, 80, 85 range without a punt. With a punt, and pick your poison on him, it's pretty easy to see him move up the board. Punt free throw, he's top 75. Punt field goal during his team in Miami, he moves inside the top 90. How many games did he actually play with the Heat? Just 17? Yeah, not that many. Free throw obviously was the bigger one. He was kind of a higher turnover guy for someone ranked out near the edge of the top 100. He had, 2.7-ish, 2.5 turnovers with the Heat. So, pick your thing. If you punt any of those categories, he feels like a very reasonable grab here at 83. If you're going straight 9-cat, he's probably more like a top 100 play just on numbers. But here's the thing. Like, we build these old man squad teams. And typically, not on purpose, but it's just the way that we draft, we end up with a lot of efficient players, sort of high assist, low turnover, decent percentages guys. So there is room for someone like an Andrew Wiggins, who gives you 24 and 3 with a steal, block, and 2 3-pointers. He just does it on not great percentages and a high turnover number. The free throw thing is more annoying to me than the turnover thing. With turnovers, it's so easy to cover that up. All you had to do was in the first 3 rounds, basically take one guy who wasn't a high turnover guy. And then you have room for a high turnover dude later in your draft. The free throw one is a little bit more obnoxious because you kind of hope that your bad foul shooters are coming out of the center or power forward spot. And for Wiggins, it's very much coming out of the small forward spot. And I don't care what position he actually plays on the court. I'm talking about his fantasy game. He has the fantasy game of a small forward. And you'd hope that someone like that is not going to be a big drag on free throw, but he is. So again, pretty reasonable spot for Wiggins to get drafted. I have no strong objections to it here. He's just not my favorite with the way we typically build teams. Let's go to Anthony Simons, a member now of the Boston Celtics, acquired in the Drew Holiday trade, and also a little bit of a victim of weird fantasy games. Simons last year was number 102 down the stretch. What was he for the entire season? 110, pretty much the same thing. For the Blazers, 19 points, a little under 5 assists for the entire year, 2 and change rebounds, doesn't get defensive stats, does hit a bunch of threes, does not hit field goals at a particularly solid clip, is a good foul shooter. He has, as we've talked about on this show 1,000 times, not about him, but just in general, the prototypical shooting guard fantasy stat set. Shooting guard stat set is typically good at points, threes, and free throw percent, and you're looking for some other, like, not hyper elite, doesn't have to be that great, but just good category. And that's how they push up into fantasy value. The problem for Simons is that his other, if you want to call it good category, was assists, and he didn't even get to 5 this past year. Now, the Celtics are a weird zombie team. He slots into Drew Holiday's spot, but Jason Tatum and Kristaps Porzingis are gone. So Peyton Pritchard is there. He's going to get to do some stuff. But it feels like Simons could still get a pretty good chunk of the floating usage. what do we want to call it, but like what's available in Boston. Because Jason Tatum was taking 20 shots a game, 6 free throws, and had 6 assists. Porzingis was at 14 shots a game and 5 free throws. That was the 1 and 3 usage guys on the Celtics. So even if you shove Peyton Pritchard into a larger role, and Derek White will do a little more, and Jaylen Brown will do a little bit more, there's still a lot on the table, and Simons feels likely to go and grab a decent portion of that. So again, like, this is a pretty damn reasonable spot. I feel like Yahoo's got this range pretty freaking close to right. John Collins, to me, is the one guy in this group that in straight 9-cat does have a little bit of upside. I don't think Anthony Simons has what you'd call that in strict to 9 category terms. He doesn't have that big time upside. But again, as we just talked about with Andrew Wiggins, or who the hell did we talk about right before that? Devin Vassell. Not as much Devin Vassell, but Wiggins, if you toggle on and off the weak categories, you can do some real damage. Simons was absolutely terrible at field goal percent last year. In punt field goal teams, he jumped from 110 to 67. So he, to me, is a great grab in the 80s if you're punting field goal. Because I think he does get to 16 shots with Boston. I feel like he can replicate what he did last year. And he was better than this rank if you didn't care about field goal percent. If you do, I think it's going to be hard for him to break this mark. Because he's quite bad at that category. Has been all 7 years he's been in the NBA now. Can you believe it's been that long? He's good at free throws. He's good at scoring. He's good at threes. Like, you know what he's good at. There's no surprises here. He had a particularly good steals season last year also. I don't know that that's a thing that carries over. So just, be ready for it. Straight 9-cat, probably not the spot for him. Single punt, which is how most of you guys are doing it, head-to-head leaguers, you're probably single punting. He makes sense here. Malik Monk, on the other hand, I think this might be the first one in this range that I just disagree with. Now, Monk knows number 69 last year if you were punting field goal. So again, there's that same pathway, but I think his job got worse season over season. The Kings brought in Dennis Schroeder, so that last starting spot is not really up for grabs anymore. Monk likely slides back to his bench role, which he was fine at, but his big numbers, there was that stretch where he was like a top 50 guy, and I had him on the sell high board, and that one landed pretty easily, was when he was starting. He got shoved into the starting lineup. Initially, it was because DeMar DeRozan missed a couple of games, and then De'Aaron Fox missed a few games, and then he just stuck. Like, he just stayed in the starting 5 when they all came back. But not forever. Eventually, he was moved back to the bench. He and Keon Ellis kind of rotated in and out of the starting 5. Monk was number 99 per game, straight 9-cat, overall on the season, on 17 points, 4 boards, 5.5 assists, a steal, half a block, 2 threes. Pretty similar fantasy game to Simons with better defensive stats, basically, and slightly fewer shots. And that, to me, is the issue. I think his usage goes down this coming year. Zach LaVine, Domantas Sabonis, DeMar DeRozan, and now Schroeder, those guys are all going to be taking more shots than Monk, I would think. Keegan Murray is the other starting member of the starting 5. And then you've got Monk and Keon Ellis battling for the backup spot. There will be enough for Monk to be fantasy relevant. We also heard rumors the entire offseason that the Kings were trying to move him, that they don't even really want to be on the Malik Monk bandwagon anymore. So to me, all of the read the tea leaves stuff here on Malik Monk suggests that the Kings are kind of out on him. Kings over at FanDuel have a regular season win total mark of 34.5, down the rabbit hole. They won 40 games last year, and FanDuel, Vegas, whoever, odds makers, have them moving hard in the wrong direction. They, by all accounts, finished around where they should have, given sort of like the expected number of wins. I just, with no De'Aaron Fox, he's the guy that won close games for them. It was Fox. That was the dude. And I don't think Schroeder's going to change that very much. To me, this is a team going in the wrong direction. I lean towards the under on that number over at FanDuel for whatever that's worth. And then with Malik Monk, this to me is not a spot that I'd want him. As we mentioned, if you're punting things, he gets closer. But to me, punt field goal Malik Monk can maybe get to this rank. This is more like an upper limit for him. And 9-cat, I don't think he has almost any chance. Norman Powell is on the Heat now, and maybe we should have talked more about Norm when we were talking about Andrew Wiggins a few minutes ago. But I'm a little skeptical of what Norm can do this year. His fantasy game is weird. It's weird. He was number 77 this past season, but a lot of that came before Kawhi returned. After Kawhi came back, Powell was just not effective. His shot count dropped from 16 to 12 and a half. He still was playing minutes, but it wasn't translating. And he doesn't rebound, and he doesn't pass, and he doesn't have the shooting guard stat set. He gets you threes, yes, and he scored, but he's not that great of a foul shooter. He has been at times. He just hasn't been as much lately. And the steals are fine, but they were also kind of unexpectedly high when you compare to most previous seasons for Norm. To me, he's also buried behind Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, and Andrew Wiggins on his new team, and I just don't really want Norm as a fourth option. The fact that he's good at field goal percent and decent at free throw percent raises the floor, but the fact that he doesn't rebound or pass, and he's not really elite at anything, lowers the ceiling. So he's a high floor, low ceiling guy who's probably going to end up somewhere in the 120 range, if I had to guess. Maybe he could go a little bit higher than that, but I don't really want Norm at this spot. Between Norm and Monk, I say neither. Not my cups of tea. If someone goes down for the Heat, that's how things really improve for Norm, where I think Malik Monk, I don't know that one injury might not be enough for him in Sacramento. You might need two. We're one injury away from Norm probably being a useful fantasy player in Miami. So burger board guy, but not a guy I'm drafting in the 80s. Not when I do still believe that there are some pretty solid, predictable dudes floating around out there, and he's just not one of them. Let's go to Freddie VanVleet. Next name on the board, old Frederick. He's at number 87, and I think after last year, I kind of like him here. Two things happened last year with VanVleet. No excuses. I was wrong. There was no reason for him to be drafted in the third round. He saw a usage downtick this past season that pushed him, because he was a second, third rounder for a long time, including his first season in Houston. The usage downtick would have pushed him down into the fourth round, but for the fact that he had a terrible shooting season. So there were two things that happened with VanVleet last year. There was the usage downturn, which I underrepresented in my numbers. But then there was also the off shooting year, which I did not expect in my handicap. He had his worst shooting season really ever, because his rookie season, he only played, a total of 300 minutes the entire year. So we can kind of throw that one out. He'd never shot as poorly as he did this last year. And, admittedly, a lot of his shots were three-pointers, but that's kind of always been his shtick. Not a ton changed there. He just couldn't make any of them. He had basically a career worst three-point shooting year at 34.5%. He had a career worst free throw shooting year at 81%. And all of that translated to a career worst field goal year at 37.8. So yes, the usage was down, but also he could not drop a stone in the ocean. And last year he finished at number 74 in 9-cat. If he just shoots his career marks, he's inside the top 60. If it's just free throws in the mid-80s and field goal in the high 30s to low 40s, his career mark is right at 40, and his free throw career is 86. So 2% field goal, 5% free throw. If you just make those tiny adjustments, he moves from number 75 to inside the fifth round. And now he's being scaled back further. I don't know if it's because Kevin Durant is in town or what, but we also need to remember the Rockets dumped Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks in that KD deal. They actually sent out more shots per game, if you just want to like tally it the simple way, than they brought back in. And yeah, they signed Dorian Finney-Smith, but he's not out there looking to take some shots. What they've done is they've consolidated the basketball into fewer hands. Instead of having to have it with Jalen Green and Freddie VanVleet and Alperen Sengun and Dillon Brooks and Amen Thompson and who am I forgetting? Cam Whitmore, he's also gone. They've peeled it back to basically 4. KD, Sengun, Amen Thompson, Freddie VanVleet. Those are basically the 4 guys. I didn't even say Jabari Smith Jr. I guess you could put him on both those lists if you want. So instead of 7 or 8 guys the Rockets are attempting to shoehorn into, it's more like 5 this year. And so I don't think that there's really a whole lot less that Freddie VanVleet can do season over season unless they decide that they want Amen Thompson to be the starting point guard and Freddie to come off the bench. But that doesn't seem likely. He's been their veteran leader. I'm assuming he signed his rearranged contract to come back. And by the way, Fred VanVleet is not that old. He's only 31. Feels like he's old, but he's not. So I hate to do this again, but we're going back to the well, and I'm in on Fred VanVleet in this neighborhood. I think he's a deal at number 87. It's not going to be an exciting fantasy year for him. Don't get it twisted. But even if he gets the same exact, his usage rate was only 17.8. Even if that stays exactly the same year over year and you see a slight uptick in the percentages, you're still talking about a guy then that's going to get you close to 6 assists a game. The points will go up with the percentages. They all kind of float together. So like 15 points, 3 threes, 6 assists, 3 and some odd rebounds, 2 combined defensive stats. That's that. Like you get 2 rounds of value out of a guy getting drafted in the 80s there. I know. He burned us, but you got to re-handicap. It's a fresh new year. Kel'el Ware at number 88. And it's another one I think that Yahoo basically got right. He was number 126 last year, but remember the first half of the season, he basically didn't do anything. Second half of the year, he was number 88, and that job seems largely unchanged. He averaged 11 points and 10 rebounds over that stretch, 1.2 blocks, 0.7 steals, decent field goal. You know, kind of wish it was better. He was at 54% during that stretch, but he's mostly a dunker, and around 70% at the free throw line. I think we can expect a lot of that stuff to pretty much remain static. The only hope would he potentially play a tiny bit more? I don't think we need him to. If he plays 27 minutes a game, this is exactly where he should be getting drafted. The gravy here is if Ware gets 28 or 29 minutes instead of 27. The downside almost feels impossible, but it would be, I guess, if he had a particularly awful foul shooting year. Otherwise, it feels like this is sort of an easy one. What round are we in now? If we're in the 8th round? Yeah, I mean, he makes total sense as an 8th rounder. There's very little buffer on both sides with Ware. There aren't that many guys where you're like, yeah, that's almost exactly where he's going to be. This should be what Ware does. Keep this one short and sweet. He's going to play. The Heat are going to yank people around a little bit, but he's going to play, and they're going to continue to grow him. Go for it. Totally fine spot. And there is a little bit of upside there if he gets better or his minutes go up. That's the upside. We don't even need it to happen for him to hit value. But maybe it will. Isaiah Hartenstein at 89. This is another one they got right. Can you believe this stretch? This is like the stretch that Yahoo nailed, in my opinion. Hartenstein was number 69 last year, but let's also remember that Chet Holmgren missed 3 months of the season. I would expect Hartenstein and Holmgren to be playing side by side this coming year. Down the stretch, Isaiah was actually a top 50 play, but a lot of his value is tied up in defensive stats, whether they're coming or they're not coming. Down the stretch, he averaged about 2.4 combined defensive stats a game. For the year, he was at 1.9. So that was just sort of a bigger number for him. It's hard to say exactly where that's going to land. I like Hartenstein at this spot. I think, again, he's another center that has a floor of top 100, and there is upside beyond it, depending on how the Thunder decide to use their pieces. Hartenstein only needs to play, much like Kel'el Ware, about 27 minutes a game to get to this rank. Maybe even less than that, honestly. Like, you could probably get him there in 26 minutes a game, depending on, again, how the defensive stats fall. But Isaiah's a good passing big man. He'll get you 3 assists per game out of that center spot. He's going to rebound. He's not going to score very much. His free throw shooting is not particularly good. Luckily, he doesn't get fouled all that often. Only takes about 2 free throws a game, so you can usually weather that storm. Do I think he's going to get to 26 minutes? I do. So, yeah, go for it. Perfectly fine pick here. I don't know that, again, I don't know that there's a boatload of upside on Hartenstein. It's if he gets, 1 steal and 1.2 blocks instead of 0.8 and 1. That's the difference. Everything else feels very predictable for both Ware and Hartenstein. Each of these last 2 guys, like, you can pen it in. Forget penciling. You're etching it in stone. You pretty much know what these guys are going to do. So go for it. It's kind of a third center, I guess, for fantasy drafts. Yep. Terrific. And number 90 is Mark Williams, and this one's the big dice roll in this range. I just, I don't know how you can pass him up here. I know he's a huge injury risk. He has played in 3 NBA seasons, basically the equivalent of 1 NBA season. So I get it. But he's going to a place that's going to turn him loose. Phoenix, it's a fresh start. He's out of Charlotte. So he's going to get center minutes, 26, 27, 28. Maybe they even give him 29 or 30. And down the stretch this past year, he played 28, 29 minutes a game for Charlotte, and he was a 3rd rounder per game. 3rd rounder in 29 minutes a night. Because he's a high percentages big man. 60% from the field, 80% at the foul line this past year. He blocks some shots. He's not an elite shot blocker, but he's not bad. Around 2 defensive stats a game. Does pass relatively well for a big man. He can't defend anybody, but who cares? He's on a Phoenix team that's... What is this team? I don't know how you can pass up on Mark Williams in this range. I just don't. Even in head-to-head, this is an 8th rounder with 3rd round per game potential. It's a similar argument to when Kawhi Leonard is going in the 4th or 5th round at times. You're like, well, this guy can be a 1st rounder. That's a 40 slot jump. For Mark Williams, it's a 50 slot jump. And so you weigh that against the downside of the injury stuff. What happens if he has an injury-plagued year? Can my team survive without an 8th round pick? Of course they can. Some of these 8th rounders are going to get dropped. So if you pick the one that gets hurt, your team can manage. But what if? I can't help but play the what if game on Mark Williams. What if he gives you even 60 some odd games this year? He whips this ADP by totals. Per game, there's no question he beats this mark. That's not even a discussion point. I think every analyst on earth would say he does better than late 80s 90 per game. Mark Williams could be the number 90 fantasy player in about 21 minutes a night. He's definitely getting that in Phoenix. It's, can his body control itself? Can he stay healthy for an entire year on a team that, at least by all accounts at the beginning of the season, is not tanking? Now, to Mark's credit, he mostly was healthy once he came back this last year. Missed a handful of games, mind you, but it was nothing overwhelming. Over the final 2 months, I think he missed 4 games. I think it was basically the back-to-backs they sat him in, if memory serves. Missed 4 or 5, I guess, down the stretch. Now, Phoenix sits him in the back-to-backs. Okay, that's something I'd love to know. I don't think that we're going to be told that before the season starts, but it does change the computation a little bit, but not much. I don't know how you pass up on Mark Williams here. It feels almost like you have to. It feels almost like you have to because of that per game potential. Let's go back to the list here at the beginning and get it all wrapped up. John Collins at 81. I like it. Devin Vassell at 82 is kind of meh. Andrew Wiggins at 83. He's solid there if you're punting one of his 2 weak categories. Anthony Simons at 84. Same general story. Punt one thing, and that's a fine pick there. Roto, 9-cat Roto, I think I'd probably pass up on all maybe 4 of these guys in a row. Malik Monk is not really a guy I want in either format. Same with Norman Powell. I don't think that it's format dependent the way that Wiggins and Simons are. Freddie VanVleet at 87. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how he gets any worse than last year. Kel'el Ware at 88 and Isaiah Hartenstein at 89 are both perfectly solid centers. And then Mark Williams, it's a dice roll, but I feel like you kind of have to do it. So I like the centers in this range. I wonder if some of them might move up. Hartenstein and Mark Williams would be the 2 I'd expect to move up on the next board, but we'll see. Freddie VanVleet is going to be maligned after a rough last season, so I don't think he's going anywhere. John Collins might end up going a little bit earlier. Those are kind of the guys typically that I was looking at anyway. So we'll see if there's consensus, and we'll see if that is reflected in the board. Thanks for watching, everybody. Sorry about not having a show yesterday or the day before, but my health appears to be improved, if not all the way back. Probably not all the way back. I felt a little gassed just getting the kids ready for school. Take care. Only one show today. Got to pick up my kids early for a doctor appointment. Tomorrow, looking to try to get 2 shows in. We'll see how that goes. One way or another. Subscribe. Hit the like button if you're watching. 5-star review. Please do that. I'm Dan Baspers on Twitter, and I'll see you guys soon.